There's no evidence whatsoever that the suicide rate would go down in the transgender community in any marked way if people just started pretending that men were women and women were men.
But you know what? Maybe the suicide rate would go down. Of course, that's not something Ben Shapiro would know about. Am I right? The number 2 most viewed video on the Daily Wire channel. Ben Shapiro destroys transgenderism and pro-abortion arguments. When I first began this channel, like a couple of years ago, or when I first started doing political content, rather, a couple of years ago, I wanted to do like a response to this, but for whatever reason, I never got around to it. So we're doing it today. It's the 2nd most viewed video on the Daily Wire channel. It's also the 2nd most viewed video on the Ben Shapiro channel. They literally just uploaded it twice. Ben Shapiro destroys my microwave with cheese and lard jiv. Ben Shapiro pooped in your microwave? All right, before we begin, I want to point this out. Let's just get this out of the way, right? This girl looks like an SJW. Saju. Okay, maybe that we'll cut that out. Yeah, 2017 this was uploaded. Red lipstick, winged eyeliner, choker. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I'm just pointing out, for a lot of Ben Shapiro fans, this is the kind of person who looks like a certain archetype they have created. We've acknowledged that. We can get through it. All right.
How do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay.
Like, okay.
Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
Sex is biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
First off, I don't understand what this person is asking. I guess what this person's trying to say is that privilege does exist, and in a way, by your invalidation of trans people, you are basically reaffirming that and admitting to it. Something like that.
Boys pretending to be girls.
Okay.
Like, okay.
Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
Sex is biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society. It's
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man.
Oh God. Just saying no isn't a rebuttal, Ben.
And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here.
That's a really weird way to talk about trans people. And let's be honest, functionally, it is the same as what this person said. Functionally, it is the same as saying someone is pretending to be a different gender.
As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true.
Oh really? He's got no fucking proof for that.
Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue.
Okay, so he doesn't have a follow-up. He just says the idea that they're malleable is not true, but he doesn't actually give any justification for such a thing.
That I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend, I'm supposed to.
Now he's whining about being oppressed by this. Very smart man. Look at this face. Look at his dumb, stupid face. That's a good frame we've paused on. So first off, the conflation of sex and gender is really annoying to me. I am annoyed that people are still doing this. Maybe I should make a video talking about sex and gender. I'm just a cis guy. Here's what these things mean. Y'all are fucking wrong. Get it right. Don't listen to Ben Shapiro. He's wrong. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, or he does know and he doesn't want you to know because he's a goddamn fascist. Fascists don't want people to explore these things. Let's attack gender first. The idea of gender, of whether someone is a man or a woman, what makes someone a man or a woman, and what traits you may associate with that. It's subject to change over time. It varies wildly depending on the culture you live in. What people consider masculine in the United States, you go to Asian cultures and it's the complete opposite. Not necessarily Asian cultures, that's just the obvious one that popped into mind. That's why a lot of really insecure conservatives like to call, like I remember Mark Dice was calling K-pop men, was calling them soy boys who look like lesbians, and it's like, that's so cringe. And it's just because it's a different culture that has different ideas of masculinity and femininity that doesn't quite align with the ones we have in the United States. So the very existence of a different culture that has different ideas of masculinity and femininity. The very existence says, yeah, these things are kind of malleable. How's that for an answer? Ignoring sexual traits for a moment. But what makes someone a man or a woman according to gender? None of this is written in stone somewhere. It's not like when God made the universe, God wrote into the very fabric of reality, this is how men behave. This is how women behave. No! Also, let's talk about sex for a moment. Some people don't like to talk about sex. Me neither, because the idea of having intercourse makes me deeply uncomfortable. Okay. Not that kind of sex. The idea that gender and sex are malleable is wrong. Well, I don't know about that, Ben. People like him and Jordan Peterson would say, like, man, these leftists, they think there are no sexual differences, that men are women and women are men. It's not true. There are differences in sex. Female has a womb and makes eggs. A male has testes and makes sperm. By and large, that's usually how it goes. However, and this is important. Okay. I want to point this out. The person who asked him the question didn't say anything about this. Didn't mention sex at all, actually. Ben Shapiro, of course, wants to bring it up and sneak it in because that's the way he talks. That's the way he argues. He likes to sneak in little premises that no one actually said in the first place. So now people get bogged down in arguing against that instead of the original point. But we're going to do it anyway because this is a YouTube video and I can do whatever I want. I mean, he says they're not malleable, but I mean, kind of the very existence of intersex people. Now, when I say intersex, there's multiple different potential conditions that might cause someone to be intersex. But kind of the very existence of people like that suggests that this isn't a simple binary. This isn't really a yes or no, on or off, male or female kind of thing. That says the human body is quite a bit more complicated than that. I could turn this against someone like Ben Shapiro. He's not Christian, but I could turn it against like religious nutjobs and be like, you see? Maybe God was a little more clever than you thought. Maybe your God made things a little more complicated than male or female. Now, Ben Shapiro, of course, didn't bring any of that up to actually make a concise argument against this. This is just showmanship. Let's hear it from the man himself.
But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no.
Okay, he would really hate this. Maybe y'all won't get this reference, but you know who he reminded me of when he said this? Louis Farrakhan.
He talked about their grip in Hollywood and how the Jews were responsible for all of this filth and degenerate behavior that Hollywood is putting out, turning men into women and women into men.
He would really hate that. Most content, like even with Farrakhan, gets removed from YouTube because it's like blatant hate speech. But what Ben Shapiro just said there is very eerily similar to a speech he gave. Well, Ben Shapiro tried to get into Hollywood, but he failed because no one liked him. I think expecting these people to understand the difference between bimodality and binarity is asking for way too much. Yeah, you're right. But you know what? I'm giving them a chance. If they're willing to listen to reason, we will leave that path open for them. It's like Sun Tzu said, always leave your enemies an escape path. All right. Benny.
My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
I'm sorry, who's asking you to do anything here, Ben? The person only asked you to acknowledge that privilege might exist. What is this? No one's asking you to modify biology. You're not even a biologist, my guy. What are you crying about? I think what he's trying to say is he's still gonna misgender trans people intentionally because he's a sad little man and that sort of thing makes him feel good kicking on others because people used to bully him back when he was a little kid in middle school and he never really got over that. I think that's what he's saying. I'm reading between the lines a bit.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should like not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place. They can't just like.
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Which is a weird standard, by the way. So through Ben's logic here, if you're born intersex, I guess you can't ever be in the Boy Scouts. I know he doesn't like to acknowledge anything that's like outside of a binary for him because it's really strange and foreign and weird to him. But like, why not? Let's say, hypothetically, someone is born smack dab in the middle, but then they live their whole life acting masculine and they identify as a boy. And they're like, yeah, I'm a boy. I use he, him pronouns. But Technically, they're born intersex. They're in this in-between state. Would they not be allowed to join the Boy Scouts, Ben? That's a really weird thing to police. Do you want to have DNA testing for all the little children who want to join the Boy Scouts? I don't know about you, but I think that's fucking bananas. Maybe some kids just want to join and make some campfires, man. Let them do it. Let the kids have fun. What, are they gonna look in the boys' pants to make sure they're biologically male? Interesting you ask that, actually. Every time Boy Scouts come up, like, I feel like this needs to be mentioned. Time.com. These men say the Boy Scout sex abuse problem is worse than anyone knew. It sounds like, yeah, some of these people are checking the pants of little boys. In January, a child abuse expert hired by the Boy Scouts to analyze the files testified that she found 12,254 boys had reported experiencing sexual abuse between 1944 and 2016. Yep. Kind of weird how organizations like that seem to attract predatory people, huh?
You have to be a boy to be a Boy
Where's
Scout.
that written though?
In the name Boy Scouts.
And the crowd's cheering for that? That's kind of weird.
Because this is a very because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl. And
Didn't they used to call little children girls? Like, whether or not they were male or female? Until you hit puberty, then you were like a man or a woman, but everyone was a girl. Until the late 15th century, the word girl simply means a child of either sex. Boys, where they had to be differentiated, were referred to as knave girls, and girls in the female sense were called gay girls. The word boy didn't used to mean boy in the modern sense, but servant. It's the Boy Scouts, not the biological Boy Scouts. Good point. But I don't think these people are probably won't get it. Look at this guy standing next in line. Look at that face. Look at the guy behind him. I don't think these people are gonna understand. Or they don't want to understand, more likely. This person here just really walked into the lion's den.
for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did
All of human history? Alright, man. I know conservatism is supposed to be like, we don't want to change, we want things to remain good. But man, a lot of them try to look to the past so much, and they just try to make up their own version of it where things were better. They just try to redefine the past so it fits with what they want. English didn't exist in all of human history. Very true. What we consider English today has only existed for like, what, 500-600 years? What we call Old English today is pretty much completely indistinguishable from modern English.
What way gar dana in yar dagum feud kuninga thrim ye frunan hutha athalingus ellen fremidon.
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
Sometimes I listen to Ben Shapiro's arguments, and it really does seem like he's like still in middle school. If I call you a moose, are you a moose? Okay, first off, fucking rude. Ben Shapiro's such a good debater, he can't get through this without calling his opponent a moose. Second, it's the attack helicopter joke again. They only have one joke.
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms.
People are laughing at that. I mean, if you pull up DNA samples between humans and a moose, you'll find a significant difference. Now, if you pull up DNA samples between men and women, statistically speaking, you might see a little bit of a difference between their sex. This is a fallacy. Ben Shapiro is engaging in an appeal to ridicule. We should have a fallacy counter. Like, every time Ben Shapiro does a fallacy, let's take a shot.
Completely different thing. You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this.
This person is coming into this conversation presuming way too much good faith from Ben Shapiro. Maybe this person doesn't really know who Ben Shapiro was. This was 2017, so that's fair. If I ever had a discussion with Ben Shapiro, I would not be like this trying to make him understand kind of thing. I would be mean. It would be a fight. Which is why Ben Shapiro won't engage with people like me.
It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because
And why?
People are going, oh, but that's not a good argument. Again, that's another appeal to ridicule. Why aren't you 60? I don't know, because age and time is something that we can measure and we can verify. It's an actual quantitative measurement we have of time. Oh, God. Are we certain Ben Shapiro is not 3 middle schoolers in a trench coat?
Why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Hey, you know, sometimes when I get up in the morning and I stand up out of my bed, my knees feel like they're 60.
It's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change.
He thought he was gonna get applause on that one. And people were like, I don't get it. Age is significantly less important than gender. Just imagine for a moment actually saying that. Okay, first off, no, you're wrong. When your gender changes, well, you're probably just happier, if we're being honest. You're probably a happier person. When your age changes, you're not happier. You're getting older. Your body's degrading. It sucks. You have to deal with cancer. You worry about every little bump, every little ache on your body, and you feel like, oh man, is this gonna be it? Is this gonna be what takes me out? You gotta go get colonoscopies, man. Listen, I've had to have a few colonoscopies done. I'm in my 20s still. This sucks, man. This is getting older. My gender has nothing to do with my colonoscopies, okay? My gender, nothing to do with cameras getting shoved up my butt and taking pieces of my colon. All right, age kind of has a bearing on that. I have to get them done at regular intervals now. Okay, there we go. Argumentum ad absurdum is not a fallacy per se, it's just that for the cool kid's philosopher, he knows surprisingly little about formal logic, so he can't apply it properly. This is true.
You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex.
Again, with the conflation of sex and gender. So we could point out that gender is a pretty loose term anyway. Gender is a relative state of being. It's not really a matter of magic. More importantly than that, what is Ben Shapiro trying to argue against here? He's not really arguing against anything the person said. He's just giving us his own speech about how he feels about trans people. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't unicorns pink, Ben? Why aren't they pink? Oh, you can't answer that, can you? Just because a sentence makes grammatical sense doesn't mean your argument does.
You can't magically change your age.
Actually, you can change your age. Your age changes all the time. Wait. Wow, that one was really dumb, actually.
Can't magically change your age.
Wow, okay. Kind of ruined the rest of your argument there. Because your age changes over time. According to Einstein's theory of relativity. Which you should know, Ben, being the logic lord you are. If I'm traveling at a speed approaching the speed of light, relatively, I am experiencing time in a much shorter dilation than everyone else still living on Earth would be. So, in a way, yes, I am changing my age. It's not magic. It's science, baby.
Obviously, you can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. You could do lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place.
What the fuck is he talking about?
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically.
Correct biologically? What is that even supposed to mean? If I'm an amputee and I get a robot hand, is that correct biologically, Ben? No, it's an absurd argument to even begin with.
Lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place.
Now he's comparing trans people to the sterilization of mentally ill people. This is insane.
That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
The fuck?
Right, I salute someone.
Why are they clapping? How can anyone listen to this guy and take him seriously when he does stuff like this? Okay, let's go through the points he made there, just so y'all are aware, because that was a lot for no fucking reason. Just because you can do things legally, is what he said, doesn't mean it's correct biologically. 2 different points. Okay. Sterilization of the mentally ill happened, and that was bad. Also, here's a law case I'm citing for some weird reason. What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck does this have to do with anything? Guys, I'm beginning to think Ben Shapiro is not a very smart person.
Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Right, I salute someone understand how
Why are you fucking clapping, you morons?
It's not a matter of open-minded and accepting. I want them to get treatment that they see fit, but that's not involving me. The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away if I would pretend that they were the sex to which they claim.
Well, their problems might be a hell of a lot better if you stopped fucking bullying them. Look at that face. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. School shooter Ben. No one's asking you to pretend that they are the sex of which they claim membership. No one's asking much of you at all, Ben. People just don't want trans people to be bullied. People just want correct pronouns. It's really not a very high bar to meet. This original question that was brought up here, will you acknowledge that there is privilege for people who are not trans? So Ben Shapiro, instead of simply addressing that point, we are down a weird rabbit hole where he's now talking about the sterilization of the mentally ill and that people want to be a different sex to which they claim membership. This is painful.
That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Transgender suicide rate is 40%.
Wonder if there's any forces in the United States that might be contributing to that. So while I was editing this, something just occurred to me. Talking about the suicides of trans people is completely irrelevant here. Between the two channels combined, this video has 10.8 million views. You may have noticed that a lot of other transphobic people on the internet like to bring up suicide rates of trans people. I'm willing to bet that this video was probably a primary influencer on that.
According to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference.
This is another citation that doesn't fucking matter and it's irrelevant.
There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference, virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not.
Okay, I already immediately doubt this.
Which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats you.
Nothing to do with how society treats you. I don't buy that. I don't see Anderson School. This is Williams Institute Law, UCLA. Okay, that's why I couldn't find it. Anderson School is a management school. You just misspoke. Well, anyway, if we go by this, it points out there are unique risk factors that trans people have to face that the rest of the population do not, such as experiences of discrimination, stigma, family rejection, and lack of access to gender-affirming healthcare, experiencing discrimination or mistreatment in education, employment, housing, healthcare, places of public accommodation, or from law enforcement. Spouses, partners, children rejected them, respondents who have been rejected by their religious communities or had undergone conversion therapy, experiences of violence, including intimate partner violence, those who had detransitioned at some point. He said suicide rate. That's not correct. It's suicide attempts. The study actually shows that either being out or visible as trans increases the suicide attempt rate by up to 17%. Huh. Wonder why that might be. He said,
it makes no difference. There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference, virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not.
Also important to note, this is lifetime suicide attempts. If you attempted suicide as a 7-year-old because your dog died, you would be counted among the 41%. Two interrelated risk factors appear to be most strongly related to suicidal behavior among transgender and gender nonconforming adults: rejection, discrimination, victimization, and violence related to anti-transgender bias and serious mental health conditions. So the study that Ben's citing disagrees with what he said. That's amazing. That's all we need to see, actually.
Which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats you.
Do you think it could be because of they're bullied at school?
No, I don't think that. I do not think that the discrepancy. I do not think that.
The article you cited just kind of said that, yeah, it's a major part of it. Not just bullying at school, but what trans people have to face in the broader society. Your own evidence said that. The article didn't say trans people inherently are gonna kill themselves. You're wrong, Ben.
No, I don't think that. I do not think that the discrepancy. I do not think the discrepancy. First of all, I'm against bullying of any sort. Okay, the idea that somebody would beat somebody up is terrible. Okay.
Oh yeah? This next part is gonna come with a trigger warning. We're gonna see some massive transphobia from Ben Shapiro here.
He deserved the award.
Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's
that's
her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome Every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male.
Wait, it
turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
Let's get to the bad part.
So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on
Would you
genetics.
like to discuss the genetics or no?
Well, no,
what
no.
are your genetics, sir?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Asking a trans woman, what are your genetics, sir? Oh, but he's against bullying, by the way. No, you're fucking not.
Okay, as somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying.
They used to bully me in high school. Not anymore. Now I'm the bully.
The idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%. The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous.
Not quite that high, but all right, Doug.
It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite.
Well, it's not just that people are mean to them, it's that they have to face a lot more discrimination in pretty much every facet of life that most people don't get. It's also that they have to experience a lot more levels of violence. We already went through that though, so.
It is pure conjecture. In fact, it's not even true that bullying causes suicide, according to a lot of studies. For example, in the black...
Now he's specifically reducing it down to bullying, even though he brought up a study just a minute ago that specifically goes into depth about all these other things, which he's now conveniently ignoring. Convenient for Ben, isn't it?
Where the idea is supposedly that America's a racist society, blacks are bullied a lot. Okay, in the black community has significantly lower suicide rates than in the white community. In fact, in third world countries, the suicide rate is significantly lower than in first world countries.
Okay, wow. Conflating a whole bunch of stuff there. That's such an asinine argument. That America's supposedly a racist society and blacks are bullied a lot. American racism runs a little deeper than just black people are bullied. So I got these gluten-free Oreos. I'm gonna eat them. I'm gonna eat some now because this is pissing me off. It says gluten-free on the cookie. I can't eat the regular Oreos because they have wheat. I got celiac disease, that would be bad. I can look at this and I will never confuse this for a regular Oreo because it says gluten-free on it. I think that's really cool.
In fact, in third world countries, the suicide rate is significantly lower than in first world countries.
Yeah, because they got less guns.
Suicide actually seems to be a privilege of the upper classes if you actually look at it from a financial perspective. So the idea that suicidality is directly a result of people like me saying, no, men are not women and women are not men, it's not true.
Ben Shapiro is just talking out of his ass here. I mean, you really want to talk correlation. There's a really high correlation between successful suicides and gun ownership. Ben Shapiro wouldn't like that, though. That's not to say that people who own guns are going to commit suicide, but it's that if you're the kind of person who's going to attempt suicide and you own a gun, you're much more likely to be effective with it.
People like me saying, no, men are not women and women are not men, it's not true. It's also...
So you think it doesn't impact their identity at all or their depression or how they feel about themselves?
I think the idea that you're going to sacrifice the entire society's proper definition of sex because you think that there is in legal terms, somebody with an eggshell skull, meaning that somebody who has a pre-existing condition.
What the fuck is he talking about?
That makes them more susceptible to criticism, that is not a way to run a society. You can't sacrifice truth because some people are going to actually suffer because of the truth. Plus, there's no evidence whatsoever that the suicide rate would go down in the transgender community in any marked way if people just started pretending that men were women and women were men.
This man is insane. Like, just fucking come out and say you don't like trans people. That's the easy answer here. Like, why are you adding all of this weird bullshit to it? Which we already went over with that study. He doesn't even say what he wants it to. And now he's talking about, actually,
You want to redefine truth.
Ben, you're the one doing it. We're gonna sacrifice the proper definition of sex. Whatever.
Plus, there's no evidence whatsoever that the suicide rate would go down in the transgender community in any marked way if people just started pretending that men were women and women were men.
But you know what? Maybe the suicide rate would go down. Of course, that's not something Ben Shapiro would know about. Am I right? Look at that guy's face. Look at his face and tell me he's actually eating his wife out. I don't believe it.
We're trying that experiment now. We'll find out whether it works. So far, no evidence.
Have you talked to a group of trans people at all instead of this group of, like, white people?
I'm more
Yeah, he did. He did. And he was misgendering the lady to her face.
More than happy to talk to a group of any people who will have me, but usually they protest me.
Fucking good. Okay, I want to point out at this point, this person asking the questions, fucking brave as shit, man. I would have ran away.
Okay, last question about your Planned Parenthood thing. So why do you think it's not about controlling women's bodies and just about the separate life? Like, after the baby is born, how come when people don't care about them? They don't care where they end up in foster care, they don't care about the mother being poor. Like,
Okay, I do care about the mother.
You're not going to win conservatives over asking about that, though. Asking about after a baby is born. They don't actually care. They just like to wield the argument of we care about the unborn because the unborn don't demand anything. Once it was pointed out to me, it was a very easy like, oh wow, everything they say is bullshit. You think of any group of any class of people, they're gonna make demands, and if you like stab them in the back enough, they're gonna turn on you. But the unborn, the fetuses, the feti, they don't do that. Because they can't say anything. Very clever, very brilliant.
Being poor, I do care about foster care.
okay, but why don't you advocate for that though? Because
For
Planned
what?
Parenthood is supposed to prevent abortions.
Because Planned Parenthood doesn't prevent abortions. They perform hundreds of thousands of abortions a year. They perform.
Yeah, okay, this is bullshit. Most Planned Parenthood locations, like the actual physical locations, most of them don't provide abortions. Most of them provide basic health care and like basic birth control to people who can't really otherwise afford it. Bringing that up though, that doesn't really help sell his argument though. All that other stuff, that's the majority of what Planned Parenthood does. That stuff is actually good. I mean, it's all good. Like, that's good in everybody's mind, is what I mean. So people like Ben Shapiro are not going to they can't really argue against that. So they just pretend that doesn't exist.
Planned Parenthood is just abortions.
Easier that way. Who uses birth control? Ideally, everybody. Most people do in some form. Who uses cancer screenings? Who needs health care and might not be able to afford it? A lot of people. And if you're arguing against that, then some people might say, hey, you're arguing to take away access to healthcare for really poor people who can't otherwise afford it. That's kind of fucked up. So he doesn't ever actually acknowledge that. He just looks at the abortions, looks at the fetuses who can't actually say anything.
Like birth control and cancer.
I'm not anti-birth control.
I know.
Birth control is extraordinarily cheap.
That provides affordable birth control, which would in turn.
Okay, they're not the only people in America who provide affordable birth control. You can go get a pack of condoms down at the local CVS for $12.
Condoms break, people need medication.
That's not a gotcha.
Yes, and it's true that most forms of birth control are also extraordinarily cheap on an annualized basis. Unless you have a severe problem, most birth control is very cheap and readily available.
I don't know about that. People like Ben Shapiro won't acknowledge this, but like birth control as a classification of medication. You know, the pills. This isn't birth control. This is my Crohn's disease medication. Birth control as a classification of medications treat a very wide range of illnesses and diseases and symptoms. It goes much far beyond just birth control. Of course, I've noticed that they never really acknowledged that. He said he's not against it. Hey, that's good. You are against universal health care.
Going and getting that from Planned Parenthood. As you may have noticed, I'm mostly against abortion. If you want to go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care.
But you rally against Planned Parenthood anyway, and until you were confronted with this, you were perfectly fine of just saying all they do is abortions.
I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
Yep, there it is. That's not even... Oh my god. So I'm not even going to bother.
I think abortion is killing babies.
Alright, you're just fucking gone. Whatever. What did this person start with?
So why do you think it's not about controlling women's bodies and just about the separate life? Like, after the baby is born, how come when people don't care about them? They don't care where they end up in foster care, they don't care about the mother being poor. Like,
Okay, I do care.
Okay, they don't care about foster care, they don't care about mother being poor, or they don't care about helping people after they're born in otherwise really poor families that may not be able to take care of them. All right, instead of acknowledging that, we're gonna jump to killing babies, even though, like, the majority of people support the right to a woman to have an abortion.
I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
But what about in rape and incest situations?
Okay, so this is so here's the question.
It's different, yes.
I mean, this is a long conversation, and I'm enjoying it actually.
I don't think there's anything here provided none of us have heard like a million times already.
So I'm allowing you to stay, but the question of rape and incest. First of all,
Yeah, because normally his goons take the mic away from you before you can respond. I've noticed that in a lot of other videos.
Well, important to note, rape and incest are not only a vast minority of abortion cases, they're an extraordinarily low percentage of abortion cases.
Okay, also when you mentioned earlier, the argumentum ad absurdum is bringing up like an extreme example of something. This example, talking about, are we going to allow abortion? Are you going to allow abortion for rape and incest? This is a good example of using like an extremity like that to test where your logic is going to go. But Ben Shapiro can't actually understand it.
We can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that? Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay?
It's not relevant. You don't need to even address that. He knows this is a fucked up position to hold. That's why he's got to try to turn it around against her.
All okay.
Ah, good, someone who's honest. So,
yes.
who's the honest fellow? Who's okay? Yay, honest people. Good. I like the honesty. Okay, so all abortions are okay. So, oh, a sign that I can't read because it has lots of words on it. Okay, so I have one question for you and one question only on abortion. Does the vagina, the vaginal canal, magically confer personhood?
Fucking weirdo.
Answer, does the vagina magically confer personhood? Raised hands are okay. You, sir.
No, the first breath does.
The first breath confers personhood.
Breath does.
Okay, so if the baby is in the womb and is exactly the same size and has not yet breathed, and you take a knife and you stab the baby in the head, a fully formed 9-month-old baby, it is not a human. The only thing that makes it a human is when it takes a breath. It has to independently breathe.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna stick to it, yeah, because I'm also pro capital punishment and pro selective suicide. So I'm gonna stick with it.
Selective suicide? Yeah, I assume you mean elective suicide.
I mean elective suicide.
Elective suicide. Okay.
Yes, I'm not gonna make someone commit suicide.
Okay, that's good, because that wouldn't be suicide, that'd be homicide. That, by the way, I'm for capital punishment too, because people who kill people should be killed, but babies who have not
That's pretty fucking gross.
killed people should not. And this is my basic position on abortion. So let me but I'll get your answer because you're the one who asked the question. Are you willing to stipulate that all the other abortions are bad?
Get on with
Does rape and incest bother you?
I mean, no, I believe a woman should have the right to
Got it. So it's an excuse, right? So it's
not relevant. It's not a relevant distinction for the hypothetical it's being asked. It's being asked, where are you going to take the end goals of your own logic, Ben? But he doesn't want to acknowledge that because he realizes that makes him look like a fucking psycho.
It's an excuse so that we can say that, so that we can take the marginal case and then say that the marginal case applies to all cases.
He had no problem using the, why aren't you a moose? Why aren't you 60? He had no problem doing that a moment ago, but now that someone else brings it up in an appropriate context, suddenly he's got an issue with it.
Faulty thinking. But if you want me to answer specifically on rape and incest,
yeah, there you go. That makes sense.
Here's my basic answer. Rapists should be castrated or killed. You shouldn't kill babies. End of story.
Whoa, no. Jesus. That's going to include your friend Dennis Prager, though.
But are they ever castrated and killed? Most rapists don't even get convicted.
I agree, and that's usually the left side of the aisle because the left side wants to let them out after 5 years in prison. I want them castrated or killed.
Okay, what a loser. That's the left side. They want to give people a chance to improve. No. The point that was made was most of them don't even get convicted. If we're being honest, a lot of rape cases are he said, she said kind of things. And the way our justice system works, the way our police departments work, they don't have the resources or the intent or the will to even research these things. So they don't go anywhere. You know, unless it's like you got a video of it, which most people won't have, or some kind of really hard evidence. And even then, you know, good luck. You got to convince them that this really happened. And instead of acknowledging the reality of that it's a kind of a multifaceted thing that goes pretty deep, instead of acknowledging any of that.
Usually the left side of the aisle because the left side wants to let them out after 5 years in prison.
That's what we get. Okay, yeah, no, that's definitely like a reasonable, rational rebuttal that an intelligent actor would do, and not some middle school bully who doesn't understand how to make a proper argument. But he was really good in the chess club, even though nobody else in the chess club liked him.
I want them castrated or killed. I'm telling you what my belief is. My belief is not public policy at the moment. But I think, would you agree with me on that one? Can we at least get a little agreement to finish this particular parlay? Okay, should rapists be castrated or killed?
Well, yes.
Okay, good, yeah, okay, we agree.
No.
Thanks.
You know who else thought that? Didn't the Nazis also think that? I wonder why people might call Ben Shapiro a white supremacist. Well, we got through the video, everyone. Thank you. Hello, I'm gonna thank the December patron backers. Dios, LC Help, George, Jerry Pulamo, Laura Day, and Mellow Cheddar. All of you are closer and better friends to me than Ben Shapiro has ever had in his entire sad little life. So I guess, what else is there to say but trans rights?